In August 1944, as the Red Army stood on the eastern bank of the Vistula River, the people of Warsaw launched a desperate uprising against Nazi occupation. For 63 days, the Polish resistance fought valiantly in the city's streets, expecting Soviet support that never came. Instead, the Red Army halted its advance, and the Germans crushed the rebellion with devastating force. The question still lingers: why did the Soviets let Warsaw burn? The answer lies in a complex mix of military calculation, political strategy, and Stalin's ruthless vision for post-war Eastern Europe. The Warsaw Uprising, a fight for freedom. The Warsaw Uprising began on August 1, 1944, led by the Polish Home Army, Armia Krajowa, the underground military force loyal to the Polish government in exile in London. Their goal was to liberate the capital from German control before the Soviet Union could impose its own authority. The uprising was part of Operation Tempest, a wider strategy by the Polish resistance to assert national sovereignty and forestall a Soviet takeover. Approximately 50,000 resistance fighters, supported by civilians, faced off against better-equipped German forces. At first, the Polish fighters seized significant parts of the city. But as days turned into weeks, their supplies dwindled and German reinforcements arrived, brutally suppressing the uprising through executions, air raids, and systematic destruction. The Soviet advance and sudden halt. By late July 1944, Soviet forces had reached the outskirts of Warsaw. The city was within artillery range. The Red Army had just completed Operation Bagration, a major offensive that destroyed much of Germany's Army Group Center and liberated much of Belarus. Poles believed Soviet troops would push forward and help liberate Warsaw, just as they had in other occupied cities. Instead, the Red Army halted its advance, citing exhaustion and the need to regroup. To many in the West, and to the desperate fighters inside Warsaw, this pause seemed inexplicable. But Stalin's motives were political as much as military. Stalin's strategy: eliminate the opposition. The Soviets viewed the Polish Home Army with suspicion and hostility. Loyal to the non-communist Polish government in exile, the Home Army represented a threat to Stalin's plan to install a pro-Soviet regime in post-war Poland. By allowing the Germans to destroy the Home Army in Warsaw, the Soviets could eliminate this resistance force without lifting a finger. In Stalin's cold calculations, the destruction of Warsaw's independent Polish leadership removed a major obstacle to Soviet control. The Soviet-backed Polish Committee of National Liberation, based in Lublin, was waiting in the wings to assume authority. Supporting the uprising might have bolstered the standing of the anti-Soviet opposition instead. Denial of Western aid. The Western Allies attempted to support the uprising by airdropping supplies. But Soviet authorities refused to allow Allied planes to use Soviet airfields, making it nearly impossible to provide effective aid. Only after international pressure did the Soviets grudgingly allow some limited support, but by then it was too late. The aid was insufficient, and the Polish resistance was already crumbling under the weight of German firepower. Aftermath: a city in ruins. The uprising officially ended on October 2, 1944. Roughly 200,000 Poles, mostly civilians, were killed. The city was systematically demolished by German forces, an act of reprisal and destruction that left 85% of Warsaw in ruins. When the Red Army finally entered Warsaw in January 1945, they found a silent, shattered city. There was no resistance left to welcome them, and no political opposition to challenge Soviet control. The Home Army had been destroyed and Stalin's influence over Poland was secure. Legacy and controversy. To this day, the Soviet refusal to aid the Warsaw Uprising remains a deeply emotional issue in Polish history. Many historians see it as a deliberate act of political betrayal, driven by Stalin's desire to dominate post-war Eastern Europe. In Soviet accounts, the halt was explained as a logistical necessity. But documents and post-war revelations suggest that Stalin saw the uprising not as a liberation effort, but as a political nuisance, one best crushed by the Germans. Conclusion. The Soviet decision to stand by as Warsaw burned in 1944 was not merely a tactical pause, it was a cold political maneuver. Stalin allowed the destruction of Poland's capital and its resistance fighters to pave the way for communist domination. The tragedy of the Warsaw Uprising remains one of World War II's most bitter episodes, a symbol of courage betrayed and a capital sacrificed in the geopolitical struggle for Eastern Europe's future.